The Galactic Council had existed for 12 million years. Thousands of star systems and hundreds of alien species were part of it. They had laws for everything. They had rules for trade, for war, for peace, and for contact between species. But there was one rule that was older than all others. This rule was carved into black stone walls on every space station across the known universe. The rule was simple. It said, do not provoke the humans. Do not harm their children. Do not touch their ships. Leave them alone. Nobody remembered who wrote this rule. Nobody remembered why it was written. Most species thought it was a joke. Humans were a young species from a small blue planet. They had only been in space for 300 years. They were not strong like the Kraveks. They were not fast like the Solani. They did not live for thousands of years like the eldest. They seemed weak and soft and short-lived. Many species wondered why such an important rule existed for such an unimportant species. Ambassador Crix, of the Velthari Dominion, found this rule very funny. His species had conquered 40 star systems. They had enslaved entire civilizations. They had never lost a war. The Velthari were tall and powerful with gray skin and 4 arms. They believed they were the greatest species in the galaxy. Crix looked at humans and saw only prey. On a small human colony world called New Montana, there was a farming town named Riverside. It was a peaceful place with green fields and blue skies. About 2,400 people lived there. They grew crops and raised animals, and lived simple lives far from the busy center of human space. A man named Daniel Cooper lived there with his wife Katie and their young daughter Lily. Daniel had been a soldier once, but now he was a farmer. He liked the quiet life. One morning, Daniel was teaching Lily how to ride a horse. She was 8 years old and very excited. Katie was watching them from the porch of their small house and smiling. Then the sky turned dark. Daniel looked up and saw massive ships blocking the sun. They were Velthari warships. The attack lasted 7 minutes. The Velthari soldiers came down from their ships and started killing everyone they could find. They burned the houses and the fields. They shot anyone who tried to run. Daniel grabbed Lily and Katie and ran toward the underground shelter that every colony had for emergencies. But a blast from a Velthari weapon hit Katie before they could reach it. Daniel carried his dying wife into the shelter while Lily screamed and cried. When the Velthari left, Riverside was nothing but ash and smoke. Of the 2,400 people who had lived there, only 47 survived. They had hidden in underground shelters while their world burned above them. Katie died in Daniel's arms that night. And Lily was gone. The Velthari had taken her along with 311 other children. The news of the attack spread across human space like fire. People were shocked and angry and afraid. But most of all, they were furious about the children. The Velthari had taken human children and nobody knew why. Admiral Nathan Cole received the news on his ship near Earth. He was 53 years old with gray hair and tired eyes. He was known as a calm and patient man. He preferred talking to fighting. His officers had never seen him truly angry. That changed when he watched the recording from Riverside. He watched the Velthari ships arrive. He watched them burn the colony. He watched them grab screaming children and drag them onto their ships. His hands started to shake. He called an emergency meeting with the leaders of Earth's military. General Christina Webb came. She was the head of military intelligence. Captain Ryan Torres came. He commanded the carrier ship Defiance. Dr. Laura Mitchell came. She was an expert on alien biology. They all sat in a small room and looked at each other with grim faces. Nathan asked how many children were taken. Christina checked her computer and said 312. All of them were between 4 and 16 years old. The room was silent for a long time. Christina said the Galactic Council had sent a formal complaint to the Velthari. They expected there would be sanctions and negotiations. Nathan stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at Earth floating in the darkness of space. He said he wanted to speak to the eldest. The eldest was the oldest being in the galaxy. It was made of living crystal and had helped write the original laws of the Galactic Council. When the holographic call connected, the eldest appeared as a shimmering shape of light and glass. The eldest said it had been a long time since they spoke. It assumed this call was about the Velthari incident. Nathan repeated that word. Incident. The eldest said the council would handle this through proper channels. The Velthari would face consequences. Nathan said he was calling to inform the council that Earth was leaving council authority for the duration of this conflict. A ripple of light passed through the eldest's crystal body. It said it urged Nathan to reconsider. War with the Velthari would be costly for both sides. Nathan said they took our children. The eldest paused for a moment. Then it said something strange. It said the rule was not written to protect humans from the galaxy. It was written to protect the galaxy from humans. The eldest said they had watched humanity for a long time. They had seen what humans became when they were pushed too far. The rule existed because the galaxy feared what humans might do. Nathan turned to face the hologram. He said, "Then you should have made sure everyone followed it." Then he ended the call. That night, Nathan sat alone in his room. He opened a locked box and took out an old photograph. It showed a younger version of himself with a woman and a small boy. The picture was taken 30 years ago on a colony world called Harmony. That colony had been attacked too, by a different species. Nathan had been the only one in his family to survive that day. The galaxy had forgotten what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose. Nathan Cole had not forgotten. He started making calls. Within hours, every human ship and soldier and spy across the galaxy received the same message. It said, "Come home. We have work to do." The Velthari thought they had won an easy victory. They had no idea what was coming. 3 months passed after the attack on Riverside. The Velthari Dominion celebrated their successful raid. They displayed the human children as exotic pets in their entertainment halls and fighting arenas. Rich Velthari paid huge amounts of money to own a human child. They thought humans were like rare animals to be collected and shown off. Ambassador Crix was promoted to High Overseer for his bold attack against the humans. He was considered a hero among his people. The Galactic Council watched and waited for Earth to respond. When no response came, they assumed humanity had accepted their loss. Several alien species privately laughed at the humans. They called them cowards. They said humans were all talk and no action. They said the old rule about not messing with humans was clearly just a silly old story with no truth behind it. They could not have been more wrong. In the asteroid belt of the Sol system, far from any prying eyes, humanity had been very busy. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the observation deck of a hidden space station called Prometheus Base. He watched the largest military buildup in human history take shape before his eyes. 200 warships floated in perfect formation. 40 carrier groups waited for orders. 12 million soldiers and marines trained day and night. And there were weapons and technologies that humanity had kept secret from the galaxy for over a century. Things that no other species knew existed. Things that would change everything. Captain Kevin Price was a young officer fresh from the military academy. He approached Admiral Cole with a message. He said the Velthari ambassador was requesting a meeting. The ambassador wanted to discuss terms for returning the remaining children. Nathan did not look away from the window. He asked how many children were still alive. Kevin swallowed hard before answering. Intelligence reports suggested about 180 were still alive. The rest had died. He could not finish the sentence. Nathan said the word terms very quietly. He said, "Tell the ambassador there will be no negotiations. Tell him that in exactly 72 hours every Velthari who participated in the raid will face justice. Every official who approved it will face justice. Every citizen who bought a human child will face justice. And tell him that if one more child dies before we arrive, we will not stop at those responsible. We will not stop at all." Kevin's eyes went wide. He started to mention council protocols, but Nathan interrupted him gently. He asked Kevin if he had children. Kevin said yes. He had a daughter who was 7 years old. Nathan said, "Imagine someone took her. Imagine you saw recordings of her being sold and hurt and treated like property. Now tell me about council protocols." Kevin was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up straight and said he would deliver the message personally. He left the room with new fire in his eyes. General Christina Webb entered as Kevin left. She said the fleet was ready, but she had to ask if they were really doing this. The Velthari had twice as many ships and 10 times as much territory as humanity. Nathan said that 40 years ago, a species called the Mendari had 3 times their ships and 50 times their territory. The Mendari had killed 12,000 human colonists on a world called Kepler Prime. He asked Christina if she remembered what happened to the Mendari. She nodded slowly and said they did not exist anymore. Nathan asked how long that war lasted. She said 18 months. Nathan picked up his command tablet. He said the Velthari did not know what humanity could really do. Nobody in the galaxy knew. Humans had spent 200 years letting everyone underestimate them. They had traded at a disadvantage. They had accepted insults and small attacks without fighting back. Everyone thought humans were weak. Everyone thought humans were afraid. He pulled up a holographic map of Velthari space. He said we are about to remind them why the rule exists. On the Velthari homeworld of Veth Prime, High Overseer Crix received the message from Admiral Cole. He laughed so hard that his throat hurt. He announced to his council that the humans were threatening them. He said those soft, short-lived creatures actually thought they could challenge the Dominion. His military advisor, Commander Thex, was not laughing. He said he had studied human history and they should not be underestimated. He said human wars were unlike anything else in the galaxy. Crix asked what he meant. Thex explained that most species fought for territory or resources or strategic advantage. They calculated acceptable losses and retreated when the cost became too high. Humans did not think this way. When humans fought for what they called righteous causes, and especially when children were involved, they did not stop. They did not negotiate. They did not accept any outcome other than total victory or total death. They would sacrifice everything to win. Crix waved his hand dismissively. He said this was emotional nonsense. Wars were won by numbers and firepower. The Velthari had both. He said, "Let them come. We will crush them and take more of their children as a lesson." Thex bowed and said nothing more. But that night, he quietly moved his family to a distant colony on the far edge of Velthari space. He had read enough human history to know what was coming. He had read about their world wars. He had read about how they kept fighting even when all hope seemed lost. He had read about what happened to those who harmed human children throughout their history. The punishment was always severe. The punishment was always complete. Across the galaxy, other species watched with interest. Some hoped the Velthari would crush the humans and prove that the old rule was meaningless. Others remembered old stories passed down through generations. Stories about a species that seemed peaceful until you pushed them too far. Stories about a species that would burn down the universe to protect their young. The eldest watched from Council Station Prime. Its crystalline body flickered with ancient light. It remembered why the rule had been written all those millions of years ago. It remembered the species that had broken the rule before. It remembered what had happened to them. None of those species existed anymore. In the darkness of space, 200 human warships began to move. They traveled in perfect silence, with their weapons powered and their crews ready. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Defiance and watched the stars slide past. The storm was coming, and the Velthari had no idea how bad it was going to be. The first sign that something was wrong came when Velthari Outpost 17 stopped responding to communications. It was a small installation on the edge of Dominion space. Nobody important was stationed there. The commanders assumed it was just a technical problem. Then Outpost 22 went silent. Then 31. Then the entire Keth sector stopped responding. 47 military installations went dark in less than 12 hours. High Overseer Crix stared at the strategic display in his command center. His forearms trembled with confusion and growing fear. He demanded to know how this was possible. His aide was shaking as he explained. All the patrol fleets were gone. There were no distress signals. There was no wreckage. The ships and stations had simply stopped existing. Crix said that was impossible. Those were heavy cruiser groups with powerful weapons. He ordered the Third Armada to investigate immediately. 6 hours later, the Third Armada was gone too. 140 warships vanished without sending a single message. Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the bridge of the Defiance, watching the remains of another Velthari fleet drift past the windows. The battle had lasted 4 minutes. It had not really been a battle at all. Captain Ryan Torres reported that all enemy vessels were destroyed. There were no survivors. Nathan asked if they had confirmed kills on the command staff. Ryan checked his console and said yes. Admiral Vex and all senior officers were confirmed dead. Nathan asked about the children. Dr. Laura Mitchell looked up from her station and said intelligence suggested most of them were being held on the Velthari homeworld in the capital city. They were considered too valuable to keep at military bases. Nathan said then Veth Prime was their final destination. He ordered the fleet to continue advancing. The human fleet moved through Velthari space like a silent wave of death. The technologies they used were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Their ships had special hulls that could shift between dimensions, making them nearly impossible to hit. Their weapons could target specific genetic markers and kill only Velthari while leaving everything else untouched. Their battle computers learned and adapted faster than any living mind could think. For 2 centuries, humanity had pretended to be a minor species. They had let themselves be overlooked and underestimated. They had accepted bad trade deals and small insults without complaint. The galaxy thought humans were weak and primitive. In reality, humanity had been preparing for exactly this kind of moment. They had been building weapons in secret. They had been training soldiers in hidden bases. They had been waiting. On Veth Prime, panic was beginning to spread through the population. Crix had sent the entire Dominion fleet to stop the human advance. It had not even slowed them down. Every fleet sent against the humans was destroyed within minutes. No Velthari ship had managed to damage even a single human vessel. Crix slammed his 4 fists on the command table in rage. He screamed about how this was possible. He said humans were supposed to be primitives. They were supposed to be weak prey animals. Commander Thex, who had been forced to return when summoned, spoke carefully. He said he had warned that humans were dangerous, but he had been wrong about one thing. Crix demanded to know what he meant. Thex explained that he had thought humans were dangerous because they were emotional. Now he understood that was only part of it. Humans were dangerous because they were patient. They had waited for years. They had watched everything. They had let the galaxy believe they were weak while they built something terrible in the shadows. Every species that attacked them over the centuries had helped them learn. Every war had made them stronger. Every loss had made them more determined. A new alert flashed on the display. The human fleet had entered the Veth system. Over 200 warships were approaching the homeworld in perfect formation. Crix ordered all defensive platforms activated. He wanted every remaining ship and soldier and weapon ready to fight. He said they would stop the humans here. Thex said quietly that they should consider evacuating or surrendering. The humans had offered no terms, but perhaps they might show mercy. Crix's voice rose to a scream. He said, "Surrender to cattle. Surrender to prey. Never." He said the Velthari Dominion had conquered 100 species. They did not bow to anyone. He activated the communication system and addressed all forces. He told them to prepare to defend the homeworld. He said these humans would learn what it meant to challenge the Dominion. Above Veth Prime, the human fleet spread out like a net closing around its prey. Admiral Nathan Cole watched the planet below. Millions of Velthari waited down there ready to fight. Christina said the Velthari were not going to surrender. They would rather die than admit defeat. Nathan said he knew. He was counting on it. Christina asked about the children. If they attacked the planet, the Velthari might use the children as shields or kill them out of spite. Nathan was quiet for a moment. Then he asked Dr. Laura Mitchell if the package was ready. Laura nodded and said the targeted virus was prepared. Once released, it would spread through the Velthari population within hours. It would only affect Velthari biology. The human children would not be harmed. Nathan asked about the mortality rate. Laura hesitated before answering. She said 100%. Every Velthari on the planet would be dead within 3 days. The bridge was completely silent. Christina said slowly that Nathan was talking about killing an entire species. Complete extinction. She said the council would never accept this. Nathan interrupted her. He said the council did nothing when the Velthari took their children. The council watched and filed complaints. He said the galaxy had rules, but those rules only mattered if everyone followed them. The Velthari chose to break the oldest rule. Now they would learn why it was written. He looked at the planet below, at the millions of Velthari, preparing to defend their world. They still believed they could win. They still believed they were superior. Nathan gave the order. Launch the package. Dr. Laura Mitchell's hand hovered over the console. The viral package sat in the launcher waiting for her command. One button press would end the Velthari as a species. 2 billion lives hung in the balance. Laura spoke with strain in her voice. She said there were 2 billion Velthari on that planet. Not all of them had supported the raid. There were children down there too. Velthari children who had done nothing wrong. Nathan said he knew. Laura asked if this was who they were now. She asked if this was what humanity had become. Before Nathan could answer, a new signal appeared on the communications console. Captain Ryan Torres looked up in surprise. He said they were receiving a transmission from the planet. It was not from the military. It appeared to be from a civilian. Nathan said to put it through. The holographic display flickered and a figure appeared. It was a young Velthari, barely more than a child by their species standards. Behind the young alien, Nathan could see dozens of human children huddled together. They looked scared, but they were alive. The young Velthari spoke in broken English. It said, "Please, human admiral." It said its name was Seer. It said it was a caretaker. It said it had hidden these children from the overseers. It knew what its people did was wrong. It had tried to protect the human children. It begged the admiral not to punish everyone for the crimes of the leaders. A small human girl pushed past Seer. She looked about 8 years old with messy brown hair and a dirty face. She asked if the admiral was there to take them home. Nathan felt something crack inside his chest. He asked what her name was. The girl said her name was Emma Bradley. She said her daddy was a farmer. She said the bad ones took her, but Seer kept her safe. She said, "Please do not hurt Seer." General Christina Webb watched Nathan carefully. She had served with him for 20 years. She had seen him make impossible decisions in impossible situations. But this was different. This was the moment that would define what humanity would become. Nathan asked Dr. Mitchell how precise the virus targeting was. Laura said it was genetic. It would affect all Velthari everywhere. Nathan asked if she could modify it. Could she make it target only specific individuals instead of the whole species? Laura's eyes went wide. She said that would take weeks at minimum. It would require genetic samples from the specific targets. Nathan turned back to the hologram. He asked Seer how many Velthari had tried to protect the children. Seer said many had tried. The raids were ordered by the overseers and the military. Common people did not want this to happen. Some had hidden children at great risk to themselves. Others had spoken against it and been silenced. Nathan asked where High Overseer Crix was now. Seer said Crix was in the central command bunker with his council. They would not surrender. They were too proud to admit defeat. Nathan closed his eyes. When he opened them, something had changed in his face. The cold rage was still there, but it had been tempered by something else. He asked Christina what their ground force capability was. She said they had 30,000 Marines ready to deploy. But the Velthari had millions of soldiers on the planet. Nathan said they had soldiers, but humanity had Marines. He told Captain Torres to calculate a surgical strike on the command bunker only. They were going to cut off the head of the snake and give the body a choice. Torres asked, "What about the package?" The virus was still ready to launch. Nathan said to hold it. "For now, Doctor." Mitchell sagged with relief. Christina stared at Nathan with a strange expression. She asked if he was offering the Velthari mercy. Nathan said it was not mercy. It was a chance. Every Velthari who committed crimes would face justice. Every single one of them. But the Velthari children had not broken the rule. They did not deserve to die for the sins of their leaders. 2 hours later, 30,000 human Marines dropped onto Veth Prime in the largest orbital assault in galactic history. The Velthari military had been expecting a conventional invasion, with predictable formations and standard tactics. They were completely unprepared for what humans actually did in battle. Marines moved through defensive positions like water flowing through cracks in a wall. They did not advance in straight lines. They adapted and changed and supported each other with an awareness that seemed almost supernatural. Velthari soldiers who had been trained for centuries in rigid military doctrine found themselves completely outmatched at every turn. Lieutenant Derek Hayes led his squad through the outer defensive ring. A Velthari soldier came out of cover with a weapon raised. Before Derek could fire, another Velthari wearing civilian clothes tackled the soldier from behind. The civilian Velthari shouted for them not to shoot. It said they were on the human side. It said they wanted this war to end. Derek hesitated for only a moment. He said anyone who did not want to fight should stay down, and they would not be harmed. He said the humans were only there for the ones responsible. Word spread quickly through the Velthari population. As the human forces advanced toward the central bunker, more and more Velthari civilians came out of hiding. They did not come to fight. They came to help. They pointed out hidden fortifications. They disabled security systems. They carried injured human soldiers to safety. High Overseer Crix watched his world fall apart from the bunker command center. He called his own people traitors. He could not understand how they could betray the Dominion for these creatures. Commander Thex said they were choosing survival. He suggested that Crix should do the same. Crix said never. He activated the bunker self-destruct sequence. He said if he died, he would take as many humans with him as possible, including the disgusting human children. The display showed human Marines approaching the bunker entrance. In moments they would break through. Then Thex did something unexpected. He pulled out his weapon and shot Crix through the head. As the High Overseer's body fell, Thex deactivated the self-destruct. He opened the bunker doors. He announced that Crix was dead. He ordered all remaining military forces to stand down immediately. The war was over. 1 month after the surrender, the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Every species in the known galaxy sent representatives. The Great Chamber was designed to hold thousands of beings, and it was filled completely. This was the most important gathering in millions of years. Admiral Nathan Cole stood at the center representing humanity. Across from him stood the new Velthari leadership, including Commander Thex, who had been named interim chancellor by his people. The eldest presided over the meeting. Its crystalline form cast rainbow patterns across the walls as it moved. The ancient being announced that this tribunal was gathered to address the violation of galactic law and the war that followed. It said humanity had requested to speak first. Nathan stepped forward. The entire chamber went silent. He said that 42 days ago the Velthari Dominion attacked a peaceful human colony. They killed over 2,000 civilians. They took 312 children. When humanity demanded the children be returned, they were laughed at. When humanity threatened consequences, they were dismissed as weak. He paused to let his words sink in. He said that of those 312 children, only 173 survived to be rescued. The rest died in captivity. They died from abuse and experiments and simple neglect. They were treated as property. They were treated as toys. They were treated as things instead of people. A murmur passed through the chamber. Nathan raised his hand for silence. He said humanity came to Velthari space prepared to end them completely. They had the power to do it. They had the right to do it under galactic law. Total destruction would have been justified for what the Velthari did. He gestured to where the Velthari delegation sat. And yet he said they still exist. Chancellor Thex rose to speak. He said when the human fleet entered their system, he believed his species was facing extinction. He believed they deserved it. Not because every Velthari supported what happened, but because they allowed it to happen. They knew what their leaders were. They knew the terrible things those leaders did. And they stayed silent. He turned to face his own people in the gallery. But he said when Admiral Cole had the power to destroy them, he instead offered a choice. He said justice would come for those responsible, but mercy would be given to those who rejected the crimes. Millions of Velthari chose mercy. They helped the humans find the children. They guided human soldiers to the guilty. They chose to be better than what they had been. Nathan spoke again. He said humanity did not want war. They never had. Humans were explorers and farmers and builders. They came to the stars, hoping to find friends and partners. But they learned long ago that the universe was not always kind, so they prepared. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every species present. He said the old rule told the galaxy not to mess with humans. Some of them thought it was a joke. Some thought it was a meaningless tradition from ancient times. He said he wanted to make something absolutely clear. That rule existed because of what humans were willing to do to protect their own. Not what they wanted to do. What they were willing to do. There was a very important difference. The eldest shifted and asked what humanity proposed as terms for peace. Nathan said 3 things. First, every individual directly involved in the raid and the abuse of human children would face trial. Those found guilty would serve their sentences in human custody. This was not negotiable. Second, the Velthari Dominion would pay compensation to the families of every victim. The amount would be decided by a joint committee. Third and most important, the rule would change. It was no longer enough to simply not mess with humans. The new rule was this: the strong protect the weak. The powerful defend the powerless. Any species that attacked children of any species would face the combined response of everyone who signed the new agreement. Surprised chatter swept through the chamber. One of the older ambassadors stood and asked if humanity was proposing a mutual defense treaty that would include all species. Nathan said he was proposing that they stop being strangers sharing space and start being neighbors sharing responsibility. The galaxy had rules. It was time those rules actually meant something. Chancellor Thex stood again. He said the Velthari people accepted these terms. He said they also volunteered to be the first species alongside humanity to sign this new agreement. He said let their shame be transformed into purpose. Let them be remembered not for what they did but for what they helped build. The eldest was silent for a long time. When it finally spoke, there was something in its voice that almost sounded like hope. It said in 12 million years, this council had seen countless wars and treaties. It had watched species rise and fall. It had kept order through rules and fear. But perhaps it said they had been doing it wrong. The council voted. The result was unanimous. Every species agreed to the new accord. 6 months later, Admiral Nathan Cole stood on the rebuilt grounds of Riverside Colony on New Montana. Where there had been ash and destruction, new buildings were rising. Where there had been graves, new gardens were growing. Daniel Cooper stood beside him. In his arms was his daughter Lily. She was one of the children who had been rescued from Veth Prime. Daniel said they were calling it the Cole Accords. He said it was a fancy name. Nathan shook his head. He said it should be called something else. Something about second chances. Something about mercy. Lily pulled on Nathan's sleeve. She said Seer had sent her a message. The young Velthari who had protected the children was coming to visit. Seer wanted to see the horses. Nathan smiled. It was the first real smile his officers had seen from him in years. He said that sounded wonderful. Above them, ships from a dozen different species moved through the sky. Their crews worked together on rebuilding and bringing supplies. The galaxy was changing. Slowly and imperfectly, but changing all the same. On every space station and diplomatic outpost across the known universe, the old rule remained carved in black stone. But next to it, a new inscription had been added. It said, "The strong protect the weak. The powerful defend the powerless. All who attack children will answer to those who refuse to let evil go unanswered." Beneath the words were the signatures of 200 species shining in the light of 1,000 stars, including the signature of a species that had once been feared. Now they were trusted, and the galaxy was better for it.